The night started with laughter, with glasses raised in celebration of 10 years of marriage. Our home was filled with family and friends, a warm glow cast over the evening by candlelight and golden chandeliers. The scent of roasted lamb and expensive wine lingered in the air. Everyone was smiling. Everyone including me. I had no idea that this night, the night that was meant to commemorate our love, would become the night that ended it. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" My wife, Claire, stood, her champagne glass delicately held between manicured fingers. Her dark green dress shimmered under the lights, her beauty undeniable, her smile radiant. I reached for my glass, expecting a simple toast, a speech about love and gratitude. I was ready to bask in the moment, to hear her speak of our life together. But what followed was something else entirely. Claire's smile tightened. Her voice, though calm, carried a sharpness that sliced through the warmth of the room. "I just want to thank my wonderful husband, Daniel," she began, tilting her glass toward me. "For 10 years of loyalty. For being the man who has supported me, loved me, and," her eyes darkened. "And, of course, for all of his secrets." A murmur rippled through the guests. My fingers stiffened around my glass. A cold chill ran down my spine. "Claire," I started, but she raised a hand, silencing me. "Let me finish, darling," she cooed, her voice dripping with venom. "After all, this is our anniversary. A perfect time for truth, wouldn't you say?" Silence stretched across the room. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes land on me, expectant, confused. Claire let out a soft laugh. "For those who don't know, my husband has been quite the busy man. Cheating, lying, sneaking around like a little rat. And I, his devoted wife, have suffered through it in silence. Until now." A gasp. Someone shifted uncomfortably in their chair. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. "What the hell are you talking about?" Claire ignored me, turning her attention back to the guests. "I tried to be the perfect wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I made our house a home. But apparently it wasn't enough for Daniel. He needed more. He needed other women." Was every word. "That's not true," I said, my voice firm, controlled. But inside I was unraveling. Claire smirked. "Oh, so you're saying you haven't been cheating on me?" "Yes," I said through clenched teeth. "That's exactly what I'm saying." She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Then why is it that I found messages? Late night calls? Why is it that I've had to watch you come home smelling like perfume that isn't mine?" More whispers. More judging eyes. "You're lying," I said, my voice cold now, measured. Claire laughed. "Am I? Or are you just upset that I finally got my revenge?" The room seemed to tilt. Revenge? And then she did it. She turned her gaze across the table, to my best friend, Marcus. A slow, sickening smile spread across her lips. "That's right, darling. You weren't the only one having fun. I had my own little secret. And guess what? He's in this room right now." The air left my lungs. Marcus. My best friend. The man I trusted more than anyone. I looked at him. His face was pale, his jaw locked. He didn't deny it. He didn't say a single word. The room exploded into gasps and murmurs. Something inside me shifted. "Bro." Claire leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now we're even?" No, we were not. And she had no idea what she had just unleashed. I swallowed the rage that burned inside me, forcing my expression into something unreadable. I met her eyes and held them. Slowly, deliberately, I set my glass down. "Are you finished?" I asked. She blinked. That smile faltered for the first time. "What? Are you finished humiliating me?" I said, my voice eerily calm. Marcus shifted in his seat. Claire hesitated. "Good," I said, standing. "Because now it's my turn." And just like that, the game had changed. I would not be shamed. I would not be broken. But Claire? Claire was about to learn the true cost of betrayal. The room was suffocating. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the guests, their eyes darting between Claire, Marcus, and me. But I wasn't looking at them anymore. My gaze was locked on Claire, my once loving wife, who now stood before me like a stranger, a smug, venomous stranger who had just set fire to our marriage in front of everyone we knew. She thought she had won. She thought this was revenge. She had no idea what revenge really was. I exhaled slowly, suppressing the storm raging inside me. Anger had no place here, not yet. I needed control. Precision. If Claire wanted to make this a spectacle, I would give her a performance she would never forget. I turned to Marcus. He had been silent all this time, his hands gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. The betrayal sat heavy in his expression, but it wasn't guilt that made him look away, it was fear. "Good. Marcus," I said, my voice eerily calm. You've been my best friend since we were kids. We built our lives together. Trusted each other. You were family to me. He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Not yet. Claire scoffed. Oh, please. Are we really doing this? Are you going to act like the victim? I looked at her then and she faltered. Just slightly. You want the truth, Claire? I said, tilting my head. Fine. Let's talk about the truth. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With a few taps, I mirrored my screen to the large TV mounted on the wall. The guests shifted in their seats, glancing between each other. What are you doing? Claire asked, her confidence wavering for the first time. I didn't answer. I simply pressed play. A video appeared on the screen, grainy black and white security footage. The date stamp read 2 weeks ago. The location? The entrance to the Hollowbrook Hotel. And there she was, Claire, holding Marcus's hand as they entered the hotel together. The room erupted into gasps. Claire's face drained of color. Marcus stiffened. Surprised? I asked, turning my gaze to my wife. You shouldn't be. You thought you were clever, didn't you? Thought I'd never find out? I let out a hollow laugh. The only reason I never confronted you sooner was because I wanted you to dig your own grave. Claire's lips parted, but no words came out. I turned to Marcus. Tell me, was it worth it? Throwing away 20 years of friendship for a few nights with my wife? His jaw tensed, but he stayed silent. Nothing to say? I asked. How about I help you? Let's see, shall we? I tapped the screen again. A new set of images flashed up, screenshots of text messages between Claire and Marcus. Explicit messages. Promises of a future together. Claire stumbled back as if the images had struck her physically. Daniel, stop, she hissed, desperation creeping into her voice. I ignored her. Oh wait, this one's my favorite. A final screenshot filled the screen. Marcus, does he suspect anything? Claire, no. Daniel's too blind. He's pathetic. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Pathetic. That was what she thought of me. A slow smile spread across my lips as I turned to face her. I was pathetic? I asked softly. That's funny. Because right now you're the one who looks pathetic. Claire's hands clenched into fists. Her perfect little plan had shattered before her eyes. She had expected me to break down, to beg, to be humiliated. Instead, I had turned the humiliation back on her. Get out, I said. She blinked. What? I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You're going to leave. You and Marcus. You're going to walk out of my house and you're going to do it now. She shook her head. Daniel, I said. I interrupted, my voice sharp as a blade. Get out? Marcus stood abruptly, his face flushed with embarrassment. He grabbed Claire's arm, but she yanked it away. This isn't over, she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. I smiled. Oh, Claire, I murmured. It hasn't even begun. With that, I turned away. I had nothing left to say to them. Claire stood frozen for a moment, as if debating whether to argue, to fight. But the eyes of every guest in the room were on her. Judging. Condemning. Finally, with a strangled breath, she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. Marcus hesitated for a fraction of a second before following. The door slammed behind them, leaving behind only stunned silence. I turned to the guests. My voice was steady. Controlled. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, raising my glass once more, thank you for joining us tonight. I believe the celebration is over. One by one they began to stand, murmuring their goodbyes, their voices hushed as they filed out. Some gave me sympathetic looks. Others awkward nods. It didn't matter. I had done what I came to do. And now it was time for the real work to begin. Claire thought this was the end. She was wrong. It was only the beginning. The house was silent. The last of the guests had left, their whispered conversations still echoing in my ears. I stood in the dining room, staring at the half-empty glasses, the untouched plates of food. Just an hour ago this place had been filled with laughter and warmth. Now it was cold. Hollow. I exhaled slowly, setting my champagne glass down. My hands were steady. My breathing calm. The storm inside me had settled into something sharper, something dangerous. Claire thought this was over. She thought she had played the final move. She had no idea who she was dealing with. A soft creak echoed through the room. I turned. Marcus was standing in the doorway. For a moment, neither of us spoke. His face was pale, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He looked pathetic. You're still here, I said, my voice unreadable. He shifted on his feet. Daniel, listen. I held up a hand and he stopped. I don't want to hear your excuses, I said calmly. I don't care about your reasons. What I care about is what happens next. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. Claire. I tilted my head. Claire? Claire what? Claire seduced you? Claire lied to you? Claire made you do it? A humorless chuckle left my lips. Is that the story you're going with? Marcus hesitated. I took a step closer. Tell me something, I said quietly. How long? His throat bobbed. He looked at the floor. How long, Marcus? I repeated, my voice sharper now. A year, he muttered. The words should have hurt. They should have sliced through me like a blade. But they didn't. A year. 12 months. 365 days. That was how long my best friend had been betraying me. You really thought I didn't know, didn't you? I said, watching him. You thought I was blind. Marcus looked up, his brow furrowing. What? I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. Do you know how many times I caught you slipping? I asked. The lingering glances? The way she laughed a little too hard at your jokes? The way you both went silent the moment I entered a room? I shook my head. You thought you were clever. You weren't. His breathing grew unsteady. Daniel, please, Save it, I snapped, my voice turning cold. I'm not interested in your guilt. I'm interested in making sure you regret every second of this. He stiffened. What does that mean? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. It means, I said, that by the time I'm done, you'll wish you had never met Claire. You'll wish you had never set foot in my house. And you'll wish, I leaned in slightly, my voice barely a whisper, that you had never betrayed me. A flicker of fear crossed his face. Good. I stepped back, exhaling slowly. Now get out. Marcus hesitated, his jaw tightening. Daniel, man, I turned away. I won't say it again. Silence. Then the sound of his footsteps retreating. The front door opened. Closed. I was alone. Finally. I inhaled deeply, running a hand through my hair. My muscles ached from how tense I'd been all night, but I didn't relax. Not yet. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. Claire and Marcus had spent a year building their betrayal. I was going to spend as long as I needed making sure they paid for it. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. It rang twice before a voice answered. Daniel, the man on the other end greeted. Didn't expect to hear from you tonight. I smiled faintly. I need your help, Oliver. Pause. Then, what kind of help? The kind that ruins people, I said. Oliver let out a low chuckle. Now you have my attention. I sat down, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Claire had chosen war. She had no idea how well I played this game. The next morning I woke early. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes I saw Claire's smirk, Marcus's guilt-ridden face, the way they had looked at each other when they thought I wasn't watching. It didn't hurt anymore. The pain had burned itself out, leaving something colder in its place. I had a plan to execute. Oliver arrived at my house by 8 a.m. sharp. He was one of the most resourceful people I knew, an old college friend who had built a lucrative career in corporate investigations. He had a talent for uncovering secrets and destroying reputations. I opened the door and he stepped inside, brushing a bit of lint off his sleek gray coat. So, he said, looking around. This is the scene of the crime? More or less, I muttered, shutting the door behind him. He followed me into the living room and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. Tell me everything, he said. So I did. I told him about the affair, the anniversary party, the way Claire had humiliated me in front of everyone. I told him about Marcus, the man I had trusted like a brother, who had been sleeping with my wife behind my back for a year. I told him about the lies, the betrayal, and the proof I had gathered. Oliver listened, his face unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back and let out a low whistle. Damn, he muttered. She really went for the throat, didn't she? I exhaled through my nose. Yeah. He tapped his fingers against the armrest of the chair. And you want revenge? I don't want revenge, I said calmly. I want destruction. Oliver smirked. That's what I like to hear. I leaned forward. Claire is about to lose everything. Her reputation, her comfort, her sense of control. Marcus. He's going to regret ever stepping foot into my life. I don't want them to suffer for a moment. I want them to suffer for as long as I decide. Oliver studied me carefully. You're serious about this? Very. He nodded slowly. All right. Then let's start with Claire. I folded my arms. She's a social climber. She thrives on appearances. Her entire world revolves around being the perfect wife, the perfect woman, the perfect hostess. That's what I want to take away first. Oliver pulled out a notepad. Good. Do you have financial leverage over her? I smiled. She doesn't have a dime without me. Oliver chuckled. Even better. Let's make sure she feels that. I stood and walked to the cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. I had my lawyer draft up divorce papers last night, I said, handing them over. I want a clean break. She gets nothing. Oliver flipped through the pages, nodding approvingly. This is airtight. With the evidence you have, no judge would give her a cent. You'll get everything, the house, the assets, even the car she drives. I smiled. That's the idea. Oliver tapped his pen against the folder. But that's not enough, is it? Not nearly. He grinned. What else do you have in mind? I leaned back against the desk, crossing my arms. I want her humiliated. I want her friends to abandon her. I want the people she values to see her for exactly what she is. Oliver rubbed his chin. All right. She's active in the charity circuit, isn't she? Yes, I said. She's on the board for 3 organizations. One of them is hosting a gala next weekend. Oliver smirked. Perfect. I'll make sure the right people find out about her affair before then. By the time she shows up, her name will be poison. A slow satisfaction spread through me. Good. And Marcus? Oliver asked, raising an eyebrow. My jaw tightened. Marcus thinks he's getting away with this. That's what makes it so perfect. Oliver smirked. Tell me your plan. I exhaled, my voice calm. Marcus is about to lose everything. And I meant it. He had betrayed the wrong man. Marcus had always been a man who prided himself on control. His job, his friendships, his reputation, he built his life on the illusion of trust and stability. He was respected, admired, seen as the dependable one. I was going to rip that away from him. The first step was simple. Information. Oliver had already started digging, and within a day he uncovered everything I needed. Marcus wasn't as clean-cut as he pretended to be. His career in finance had been built on shaky ground. He had secrets buried beneath carefully crafted lies. It turned out that Claire wasn't the first betrayal Marcus had committed. Looks like our friend has a bit of a habit, Oliver said, tossing a file onto the table. A few years ago, he had an affair with a client's wife. The husband found out and nearly destroyed his career, but Marcus somehow managed to cover it up. I flipped through the pages, smirking. Interesting. That's not all, Oliver continued. His firm has been under quiet scrutiny. He's been involved in some questionable financial dealings, not illegal but unethical enough that if the right people found out, he'd be in serious trouble. I closed the folder. That's exactly what I needed. Marcus had built his career on trust. The moment people saw him for the fraud he was, everything would collapse. And I wasn't going to stop there. I dialed his office number. Marcus Carter's office, his assistant answered. Put me through to him. There was a pause, then a hesitant, one moment, a click, then his voice. Daniel? Shut up, I said coldly. Silence. I want you to listen very carefully, I continued. I'm going to destroy you. Not just professionally but personally. By the time I'm done, you won't have a career, you won't have friends, and you sure as hell won't have your reputation. Daniel, You thought sleeping with my wife was a mistake? I chuckled darkly. That was nothing compared to what's coming. His breathing was uneven. You don't have to do this. Neither did you, I said. But you made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I hung up. By the time Marcus left the office that evening, the rumors had already started spreading. Oliver had made sure of it. By morning, whispers about his unethical dealings were making their way through his firm. Questions were being asked. Emails were being pulled. It was only a matter of time before the cracks in his perfect life started to show. Claire and Marcus had spent a year lying to me. Now I was going to make sure their lies consumed them. And this was just the beginning. The first real blow landed 3 days later. Marcus had always walked through his office with confidence, shoulders back, head high, always in control. That morning, as he stepped into the lobby of his firm, he was met with something different. Stares. Whispers. Colleagues who had once greeted him with respect now averted their eyes. By noon, his boss called him in. I won't waste your time, Marcus, the older man said, sliding a folder across the desk. We've received some troubling reports about your conduct. Marcus flipped the folder open. Inside were emails, transaction logs, and records that painted a very specific picture. One of manipulation, of blurred ethical lines, of a man who had been playing a dangerous game for years. These are confidential, Marcus said, his voice tight. Where did you get them? His boss exhaled. That's not the point. The point is that this firm has a reputation to uphold, and we can't afford to be associated with someone under this level of scrutiny. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending an internal review. Marcus shot to his feet. This is ridiculous. I've been loyal to this firm for over a decade. The older man's face remained unreadable. Loyalty doesn't mean much when trust is broken. Marcus stormed out. I knew because I was watching. I stood in the cafe across the street, sipping my coffee, watching him step out of the glass building, phone clutched in his fist. He was unraveling. Good. My phone buzzed. Oliver. It's done. The board is pulling his accounts. He won't be able to talk his way out of this. I smirked. Perfect. Now let's talk about Claire. Oliver's response came instantly. She's already losing ground. That charity gala she was supposed to attend? Half the board resigned. They don't want her name anywhere near them. I leaned back in my chair, satisfied. Claire had built her world on appearances, on social standing, on being the woman everyone admired. Now those same people were shutting her out. But I wasn't done yet. I texted my lawyer. Move forward with the asset freeze. Claire gets nothing. Understood. I'll file the paperwork today. One by one the walls were closing in on them. And the best part? They still had no idea what was coming next. Claire's downfall began the following afternoon. She had spent years curating an image of elegance, dressed in designer clothes, sipping wine at exclusive events, surrounding herself with people who admired and envied her in equal measure. She was a woman of status. A woman who thrived on perfection. And now she was being erased. It started with a phone call. She was standing in the boutique she loved, a delicate silk dress in her hands, when her credit card was declined. That's impossible, she said, forcing a laugh as the saleswoman gave her an awkward smile. Would you like to try another card, Mrs. Carter? Claire's stomach tightened. Run it again. The woman did. The result was the same. Claire pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed the bank. I'm sorry, ma'am, the representative said after a brief check. Your accounts have been frozen. What? She snapped. That's not possible. It appears there's been a legal motion filed by your husband's attorneys regarding your financial access. Until the case is settled, all joint assets are restricted. Claire's vision blurred. He can't do this. But I could. And I did. She stormed out of the boutique, dialing my number. I let it ring. Then, just as it was about to go to voicemail, I answered. Daniel, she hissed, her voice shaking. What did you do? I smiled to myself. What's wrong, Claire? Card not working? You froze my accounts? She spat. I have nothing. I took a slow sip of my coffee. I know. She let out a bitter laugh. This is your idea of revenge? Making me struggle? Freezing my money? No, I said, my voice calm. This is just the beginning. A sharp inhale. You think this will break me? I don't think, I murmured. I know. Silence. Then quietly she whispered, I hate you. I chuckled. You should. And I hung up. She thought she could hurt me, humiliate me, rip apart my life and walk away unscathed. Now she was starting to understand. Marcus had lost his career. Claire had lost her status. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I had one final move to make. And this one would destroy them both. Marcus was unraveling. He had been suspended from his firm for ethical concerns, but by now the whispers had turned into full-blown conversations. Clients were pulling their accounts. His name was becoming toxic in the industry. He was trying to control the damage, but there was no coming back from this. Claire, on the other hand, was sinking fast. Her bank accounts were locked. Her social circle was disintegrating. The charity board she once sat on had quietly removed her name from their lists. By the time she arrived at the gala she had spent months preparing for, the reality of her new status became painfully clear. People avoided her. Conversations ended the moment she approached. Her name was whispered, but never in admiration. She had gone from a woman of power to a woman of disgrace. And then I delivered the final blow. Oliver had outdone himself this time. He had sent out an anonymous email, attaching all the evidence I had gathered, screenshots, hotel logs, and messages between Claire and Marcus, to every influential member of Claire's social circle. By the time she stepped into that ballroom, everyone knew. By the time she left, she was alone. She called me that night. Her voice was hoarse, broken. Daniel, she whispered. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch between us. Yes. She swallowed. You ruined me. I closed my eyes, savoring the words. No, Claire. You ruined yourself. I just made sure everyone saw it. A choked sob. I have nothing. I tilted my head. That's not true. You still have Marcus. She laughed bitterly. Do I? That made me pause. What does that mean? More silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, He's leaving me. I blinked. Marcus is leaving you? A bitter, humorless chuckle. I suppose you got what you wanted. I hadn't expected that. Not yet. Why? I asked. Because his life is falling apart, she said. Because he's scared. Because you destroyed everything and now he's running like a coward? I smiled. I didn't destroy everything. You two did that all on your own. She exhaled shakily. Are you happy? I considered that. Happy? No. Satisfied? Almost. I leaned forward, my voice low. Not yet. And I hung up. There was still one final step left. One last move that would ensure neither of them ever recovered from what they had done to me. And I was going to enjoy it. Marcus was desperate. The next morning he showed up at my office. No appointment. No warning. Just walked in like a man on the verge of collapse. Mr. Carter, my assistant said over the intercom, her voice hesitant. Marcus Carter is here. He says it's urgent. I smiled. Of course it was. Send him in, I said, leaning back in my chair. The door opened and Marcus stepped inside. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his suit slightly wrinkled, his usual arrogance completely gone. He shut the door behind him, then just stood there. I let the silence stretch. Let him feel it. Finally, he exhaled and ran a hand through his hair. Daniel, please? I raised an eyebrow. Please what? You win, he said, his voice hollow. You've taken everything. My job, my reputation. Claire? His voice cracked and he shook his head. I get it. I deserve it. But I need you to stop. I can't take any more of this. I tilted my head. You can't take it? He swallowed hard. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I'm begging you, Daniel. If there's any part of you that still sees me as a friend, just stop. I studied him. He was unraveling just like Claire. He had been so sure of himself, so sure he could betray me and walk away unscathed. Now he was standing in front of me, a man stripped of everything he once was. It wasn't enough. I stood slowly, walking around my desk until I was right in front of him. You think this is about forgiveness? I asked softly. Marcus flinched. This isn't about making things even, I continued, my voice calm, deliberate. This is about teaching you what it feels like to be powerless. To have something taken from you and be unable to stop it. He clenched his jaw. Daniel, you took something from me that I can never get back, I said. You made me question every moment, every memory. You made me feel like a fool in my own marriage. And you think an apology is enough? He didn't answer. He knew better. I exhaled slowly. You've lost your job. Your reputation. Claire. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. But that's not enough. His eyes widened slightly. What else do you want? I smirked. I want to make sure that for the rest of your life, every time you walk into a room, people remember what you did. I want you to spend years trying to rebuild everything I tore down, only to fail. Marcus took a shaky breath. Please? I stepped back. I won't come after you anymore, Marcus, I said. Not because you deserve mercy, but because you're already finished. There's nothing left for me to take. He let out a breath of relief. I smiled. But just so we're clear, you're never coming back from this? His face crumpled. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. Marcus hesitated for half a second, then nodded. He turned and walked out, his steps slow, defeated. I shut the door behind him. That was the last time I ever saw him. One down. One left. Claire. She was still clinging to whatever scraps of dignity she had left. But I wasn't finished with her. Not yet. Claire had nothing left. Her accounts were frozen. Her reputation was in shambles. The friends she once bragged about had abandoned her the moment the scandal became too messy to be associated with. The only thing she had left was the house. My house. That was about to change. I had given her 2 weeks. 2 weeks to pack her things, to pretend she had a choice, to cling to the illusion that she still had some control. I wanted her to feel the weight of what was coming. Then the final letter arrived. It was hand-delivered by my lawyer. Eviction notice. Claire was standing in the doorway when she read it. Her hands trembled. Her perfect nails, once polished and pristine, were chipped. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, not out of style but because she didn't have the energy to keep up appearances anymore. She looked up at me, her eyes glassy. You're kicking me out? I leaned against the doorway, my arms crossed. I am? Her breath hitched. Where am I supposed to go? I tilted my head. Not my problem. She let out a shaky laugh. Daniel, I get it, okay? You wanted me to suffer. You wanted me to lose. But this? She held up the letter. This is too much. I studied her, letting the silence stretch. Then I smiled. You humiliated me, I said quietly. In front of our friends. Our family. You stood there and acted like I was the villain while you were sleeping with my best friend. And now you think this is too much? She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. I could have made this worse, I continued. I could have dragged you through court, taken you for everything, made sure you never recovered. But instead, I let you ruin yourself. And you did. Tears welled in her eyes. I was wrong, Daniel, she whispered. I was stupid, selfish, and I ruined everything. But you have to believe me, I never stopped loving you. I chuckled. Love? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You don't betray someone you love, Claire. You don't laugh behind their back, sleep with their best friend, call them pathetic. I shook my head. You didn't love me. You loved what I gave you. She swallowed hard. I don't know who I am without you. That gave me pause. For the first time, there was no anger in my chest. No satisfaction. Just emptiness. I had won. I had taken everything from her. And now, looking at her, broken, lost, desperate, I felt nothing. You'll figure it out, I said. Her breath hitched. I stepped back and gestured toward the driveway, where a moving truck was already waiting. You have until the end of the day. She didn't argue. She just nodded, wiping her eyes before stepping back into the house to finish packing. I watched her for a moment, then turned and walked away. It was over. Truly over. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Free. Claire and Marcus had thought they could betray me and walk away unscathed. They had learned the truth. Now I could finally move forward. Without them. And I never looked back.